One word I would use to describe Eris is intriguing.
I would pick brutal.
If I were to describe Eris in one word, it would be really hard. Eris is about a little girl whose parents die, and she kind of doesn't know how to deal with it and goes on a massive killing spree.
So Eris isn't all about being brutal and like getting offensive revenge against your enemies. We also have the stealth component to the game. You can use like bushels of hay or bushes or stones to hide on a different plane than your enemies and have them walk by you and get out of their line of sight in order to sneak past them and get to the end of the level.
The basics of the level design will really revolve around our gameplay elements like platforms, hiding places, and enemies, and I guess laying them out in such a way that the player's going to have to think about how best to approach each situation, whether they're going to have to hide or how to navigate between platforms and different enemy groups. I'm looking forward to seeing how much we can actually get into the game, because we have lots of really fun ideas we want to implement, and I guess we're just going to have to coordinate with our programming limitations and see how much of the really fun stuff we have in mind and how much we can get into the game.
It's scary. Like, honestly, every new feature we add, every single feature we add, I start not knowing how to go about it at all, which is terrifying. Like, we're gonna hit a part where I just can't do it. And if our programmer also can't do it, then we're just gonna have to, like, figure it out.
The main goal of developing Eris is to create a really good game prototype and to prove that we as students who've never made a game before are capable of making a really, really cool retro platformer. Our first game ever, and hopefully it turns out really well.
Tonight, keeping them honest, with a story that is frankly hard to believe. You're going to want to sit down for this one. Nearly 1 month to the day of the horrific shootings in Newtown, Connecticut, in which 26 people were killed, including 20 children. Tonight, we expose a number of people who are claiming that the Sandy Hook shootings were staged.
This is now appearing to be probably the worst schoolyard catastrophe in history.
Quote, one is left to inquire whether the Sandy Hook shooting ever took place, at least in the way law enforcement authorities and the nation's news media have described. Tracy makes the case, if you want to call it that news organizations and the government may have worked together to dupe you, the public, in order to gain support from control laws. He even is suggesting that the government may have hired trained crisis actors to aid in this ruse. That's right, trained crisis actors. Now, I don't even really know what that means, what he is saying, what the words coming out of his mouth mean. To suggest the reporters on the ground didn't work to find out what happened there on the ground is beyond crazy. Everybody asks questions, but that's what we do. Journalism isn't a perfect science, of course, but to suggest that somehow means shootings didn't happen, that 20 children weren't killed, that families didn't suffer and aren't still suffering is beyond comprehension and obviously deeply offensive to many. As we said, Tracy's not the only one spinning conspiracy theories on YouTube and on
outlandish. But he said also in the note, the email that he sent to me, that the news media failed to thoroughly investigate every aspect of what happened in Newtown. So, but clearly it seemed by his statement that we had there, his last statement, that he's at least attempting to back away from some of what he wrote, those really strong remarks that he wrote in that blog.
Well, also, to say failure to investigate, I mean, yes, I mean, you don't have access to the crime scene, so in that way you cannot go in and measure things and you know, take blood samples and things. So you are, in some ways, relying on government officials, to law enforcement officials. But, you know, I talked to grieving family members and, you know, who heard from, I mean, it's obviously upsetting to a lot of people who were there and spent a lot of time there and are still there dealing with the aftermath of this coming up to the 1 month anniversary. And again, we continue to extend an invitation to this associate professor.
Here is, I don't know, a special treat, I guess, for you. Here is some lost footage that I'm actually going to throw up here. And, this is footage that I never posted. So, I found out I was banging into the linoleum even through my creative sock with like metal in it thing, because I was hitting the corn and that hit into the metal and through the sock, and the metal would still poke holes in the linoleum. So I'm moving to a different location. This is